Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I'll be sharing how to create a Flappy Bird game within using three sprites. In this first one we have this bird and I have like four scripts, and I'll explain how these four scripts are written, how these different blocks are arranged for each individual script, and how finally we get to make this bird fly when we keep pressing the space bar. Then there is the next sprite, which is basically the obstacles. So there are again four main scripts here, and using these four scripts, we have made these obstacles to move. I'll just quickly show how this is working. So if I start this space bar, it starts flying, and then I have to make it uh, keep the bird flying until it hits one of these blocks. So that's how it works for these obstacles. And then finally, there is a text which will show you how we can basically use these two scripts to notify the user whether the game is over or how to instruct the user to start the game. So with that, yeah, this is the very beginning of the game where the bird keeps flying and it's just static at its place. So we'll see how we can code this entire game. So to start with, we start with this flag clicked. The first script is we first click this flag clicked and then show this sprite and go to 0 0. So this is the first position. This is the initial position of the bird. And every time the bird goes to somewhere, whether it falls down or whether it flies somewhere else, we just reset its position to 0 0 at the beginning of the game. Then set size to 30%. We can do any size, but depending on the size of the costume, it might make more sense to just set it to 30% here, but we can make it smaller also. Wait until key space is pressed. So we start the game as soon as, so we use this wait block to start the game, and we start the game when this is pressed to a space is pressed. So once this space is pressed, then we initiate the variables. So we have different variables used in this game. So one is counter, one is score. So counter and score are basically for score keeping. You can see the score in the top of this. And then we have gravity and velocity. So sorry, we are not using my variables. So we are using four different variables. So initially we set all these variables, like three of these variables, to 0 and gravity to -2, and then basically velocity is 0, gravity is -2, and counter is 0. And then forever we change the velocity and change the velocity. So basically what this block is doing is change by velocity, change y by velocity, change velocity by gravity, and if touching edge, then hide. So what that is doing is, let's say we start playing. As soon as we start playing, see the bird is only moving when we are giving it some velocity. So whenever we are pressing the space bar, the y variable, the y position of the bird, it changes by some amount, and we can decide what amount that is, and that's where we set the velocity. And here we have another script which says that when flag is clicked forever, when key is pressed, then set velocity to 7 and wait until key not pressed. So basically once you press on the space, it will set the velocity to 7 and wait until you just leave that space button. So every time you strike the or hit the space button, it will increase the velocity or set the velocity to 7. So that's what this whole script is doing. So that's how we are setting the velocity. But then once the velocity is set to 7, we are constantly changing it by some amount, which is the gravity. So we are changing the velocity by, we are first moving the y by 7 and then reducing that velocity from 7 to 5, then to 3, and so on. So the velocity might become negative as well at some point, and that's why the bird is falling down if you don't keep pressing the space bar. And then if touching edge, then hide. And finally, if the bird hits one of this edge, which is basically the bottom edge because it will be falling down. So after that, we want to hide because at that point the game is over. So that point we are hiding this bird, and that's all about the script. So we are setting the initial positions, we set the size and all. Then we say that we'll wait until the game starts by someone pressing the space bar, and then we are setting all these variables to their initial position, and we set this forever loop where we are changing the y velocity. And we can also do some trial and error if we are changing this to, for example, let's say what happens if we increase this from 7 to something else. So here you can see the bird's movement is very small as we are pressing the bar. But let's say if we are making it smaller, then the bird will fall very rapidly, because first it will be set to 5, and then it will constantly decrease by -2 with every iteration. So very soon the bird will start falling. Let's see how it works. So see, it's not going up. So it's very difficult to take it up, and it will hit the bottom side of another obstacle. Let's see how it works. So again, keeping it floating. It's the difficulty level, you can see it has reduced a bit, because if the velocity is very low, it's easier to keep the bird floating. So but also, like if the obstacles are very different, so you can set the difficulty also using obstacles and the velocity. So you can see, like in our case, the obstacles are all at the same height more or less. But if we vary the size of the obstacle, then someone has to like move the bird up and down, and that will really require them to like beat that game, or beat that velocity. So basically we have to also play around with the velocity and the obstacle heights to make this game more difficult. So that's that. And then there is this script where we are saying, like, when the green flag is clicked, forever next costume. So this is how we make the bird fly. So you can see when I click here, the bird is flying, and that's because we are constantly changing the costume and then setting the counter to counter +1. So this is basically a way to keep score. So I'll come to that, and then wait for zero point 0.2 seconds. So for every zero point 0.2 seconds, we are changing the costume, and that's how we are giving the appearance that the bird is flying. And see, let's see what are the two costumes. So these are the two costumes. So if I keep changing these costumes, it will give an impression that the bird is flying, and that's it. That's what this script is doing. The only other thing is setting the counter to counter +1. So counter is like for how long is the bird flying. So to keep that time, we increase this counter by +1 every zero point 0.2 seconds, which means, like, if the bird stays at the top for 20 seconds, it will be like, for let's say 20 seconds, it will be 5 into 20, like 100 points. So that's how it works. So we have the scoring, we have the setting the velocity, we have how the bird moves, and how it falls when the what happens if it touching the edge. So finally, how the game is over. So let's go to the obstacle now, and the obstacle piece is how we are moving these blocks. So I'll go to this costume and see uh, how these blocks are moving. So basically, if I go to the costumes, there are two different costumes here, and with just these two costumes, we are making this giving an appearance that this is constantly moving obstacles. So how we do that? When I receive, so this is so to start this, we start with this when flag is clicked. So go to some position. We have set this initial position, and it's always a best practice to set the initial position for any sprite, because we are moving this sprite, so that every time we start the game, we define initial position for the sprite. Wait until key is pressed. So we are starting the game with a press of this space bar. So we are defining that in both cases. And then forever wait for 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, I'm hiding this original sprite and creating a clone of itself. And when I create this clone, I also start this block. When I start as a clone, first show, and then go to this position, switch costume to pick random one and two. So to give an appearance that this is we are giving like different types of obstacles, we can randomize this costume. We can add more costumes and pick random among all those costumes. So once we give that costume, then we forever we keep changing the x by -3. So that gives us an appearance that the obstacles are moving, or the bird is flying basically. So to give it an appearance that the bird is flying, we are just moving the obstacles in horizontal direction. The only thing here is the background is static. We can make this background moving as well, but that will be another video. So I'll not show it in this video. So background is static, although, but the obstacles are moving. So change x by -3 in a forever loop, and that moves the obstacle. So now if touching bird, so if any obstacle touches the bird, then broadcast game over and play a sound. So we are playing a random sound, and this B trombone sound, any sound is fine. That gives you an impression of falling or hitting. And then once the broadcast game over happens, then two things happen. So when the game is over, I receive this broadcast in this sprite called bird, and then point in direction 120. So it gives the feeling that the bird has hit something. It goes down, and then set velocity to -70. So we are suddenly increasing the velocity, so the fall is very clear, and then we are making some sound, and then set the score to counter. So whatever counter, so the counter is moving constantly, right? So we are moving the counter by +1 every time for every 0.2 seconds. And then finally, when the game is over, we capture the value from this counter in a score, and that's the score we display at the top left. So that's how we are counting the score. So that's the score. And finally, we have this text. So when flag is clicked, we are just giving them. So there are two costumes here. One is click space to start the game, and the second is game over. So what it does is, like, when flag is clicked, switch costume to 1, show, and wait until key space is pressed. And as soon as someone presses the key, so they are starting the game. So we are hiding this costume. Next time when I receive game over, then I switch to costume 2 and show it. So basically we tell them that is the game is over. So that's all about this sprite. So altogether we have three sprites. It's a very simple game. All the trick is in maintaining this velocity and the size of these obstacles and the size of the bird. So all these three things together makes this game more difficult or easier. And by changing this, you can make this game more challenging, and you can also add difficulty levels at some point. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.